Okay, we're starting on that few. First of all, good Chodesh, everybody. Chodesh. I just want to say something very short about Elul. Elul has, unfortunately, very negative connotations. People look at it with dread. But Yehuda himself says a very sweet mashal. I think about it often. He says, imagine somebody's overweight and not fit, and has not had enough exercise and not enough vitamins, and suddenly pays him a lot of money to go to a health spa. For a month, I'm paying all expenses. Then you should go to health spa. You can have every kind of thing taken care of. Suntan, vitamins, exercise. Only a fool would waste his time. And Elul is exactly that for the neshama. What it does is the ultimate health cleansing program for the neshama. Obviously, with it, there's a small negative connotation. If a person sees that I actually would pay for you for a month to go to health spa, and you come back saying to him that you didn't spend a minute going into any of the minimal baths or anything like that, you spend the entire time smoking in your bedroom, the person will say, I'm not paying for it next time. So there is a negative connotation. Like Shmuel was saying to you, I'm giving you an opportunity, but I want you to use it. And the fact is, and the truth matter is that Elul itself is the greatest of all gifts that Shmuel has ever given us. But on the more important point, there's like this, that nowadays, for whatever reason it's become, we're extremely low in resilience. And therefore, that's why we can't hit our children. We can't speak harshly. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can try, you can argue from now to tomorrow as to why not, but it doesn't work. So for the fact is that a person, if he wants to steig from Elul, has to focus not just because Elul is actually a gift, but besides for that, because of the makeup that we have, the person only can focus on the gift. And it's really what we should do is, for ourselves and for our children, we should only think about the positive aspects of Elul. Thinking about the punishments will not in the long run help us. We have to remember that we have to focus on the kindness that Hashem has done for us, that it is an opportunity to get closer to Him. It's interesting. I was reading a book today by Yehuda Steinberg, and he writes there in the middle that you can argue from now to for years about whether hitting is right or wrong. The reality is it is wrong. Prove it or not. He says it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Tachlis. The same thing regarding our feelings of Elul. Person comes to Elul thinking the whole time Pachad Adin, all he'll rebuild is a feeling of rejection of Elul. First comes to Elul with a certain amount of joy, that it's an opportunity to get closer to Hashem, it will help. That's the way, that's how we are built. That's okay. We're after that few Domud base. You've got a picture, yeah, lots of pictures again. In Yeshua Tzoas HaPesach, 3.5 lines from the bottom. In Yeshua Tzoas HaPesach, Afi Shuacham Esa in Tzorech Lamayit. So you've got a Mavoi, and the entrance of the Mavoi is more than 10 amas wide. And you make it Tzoas HaPesach, then it is okay, even though we said it has to be 10 amas, but if you've got a Tzoas HaPesach, it's okay. Now, if you remember,
that must be like
no, not necessarily. It could be. I mean, there are those here, but let's get clear a different point. Like this. We had a sugi of a malta. Does anybody remember what a malta is? Like wooden boards that go across and they attract people's attention. We had a sugi of Tzoas HaPesach. What? Yudobis. So we had the Tzoas HaPesach works if the entrance is wider than 10 amas. Normally an entrance must be more than 10 amas, but if it's got an entrance rate, Tzoas HaPesach, it works. If it's higher than 20 amas, it's no good. If you have an amaltera, it's okay. What about the other way around? What about an amaltera when it's too wide, or Tzoas HaPesach when it's too high? Again, the Mishnah tells us 2 halachas about the entrance of a movie. It mustn't be too high, not more than 20 amas. It must be too wide, not more than 10 amas. And now the Mishnah told us by both cases we found the heter. Too high, what's the heter amaltera? Too wide, it's Tzoas HaPesach. The question is, what about the Tzoas HaPesach if it's too high, or an amaltera if it's too wide? That is the Gemara's discussion for the next few nights. It's most like this. Ashkan Tzoas HaPesach, the Mahanya Baruch. We see that Tzoas HaPesach works if it's too wide. The amaltera, the Mahanya Begove, amaltera works if it's too high. Ipchemai. What about the other way around? Top of Yudalef from Yudalef. Ipchemai. Toshema. The Tanya Movi Shu Gavaya Mesimamo. A Movi which is higher than 20 amas, you might. The Miesh Tzoas HaPesach, Eino Tzorech Lamayit, you don't need to go down. Tzoas HaPesach is 3 boards. One, a ches.
But then that becomes your height.
Doesn't matter. The Tzos Pesach can be more than 20 amos high. A kiva is a single beam. A kiva is a single beam. But when you've got the whole thing, the whole ches, then even if it's more than 20 amos high, it is okay, right? So now we ask the double question: what about the Tzos Pesach if it's too high, and a malta if it's too wide? Half the question has been resolved. Why? It says clearly in the Brisa that Tzos Pesach, when it's too high, is good or not good. What's the Brisa say? Good. The Brisa says Mefosh, it is good. Again, it says clearly that's okay. So we solved half the riddle. The riddle was, it's Tzos Pesach for higher than 20 times, it's okay or not? Yes, it's good. A malta if it's too wide now. It says about malta that you've not settled. So most of that prove it to you. Tosh Mad Tali Mobu Shugava Vesimamo, you might. Barocham Ve'esa, you might. Beam Yeshua Tzos Pesach, ain't Tzorch L'mayt. If it's got Tzos Pesach, you don't need. V'meshna Malta, ain't Tzorch L'mayt. My lava safe is the Malta not going on the last case when it's too wide. Loi Avesha. So this is the end of the topic. And unfortunately, if you work through the Gemara properly, you'll come to the conclusion that we do not know the answer to a Malta. Regarding a Tzos Pesach, we've learned that if it's too wide or too high, a Tzos Pesach works. Regarding an Amaltera, we've learned if it's too high, it works. Regarding an Amaltera, if it's too wide, the Gemara doesn't say. Because the Gemara brought a Brisa which seems to say it's okay, but the Gemara says maybe the Brisa only talk about too high, the Brisa doesn't say clearly in the case of too wide. So what would you paskin if somebody would come to your Shabbos afternoon? I made my mobile too wide and I put an Amaltera there, and you work through this Gemara and the Gemara doesn't tell us the answer. What would you paskin? Oh, wait. Is he allowed to carry the mobile? That's what I'm asking. Allowed to carry on the side? Yes, the malta is on the side.
Well, it's on the top. The malta is on the top.
No, but here it's too wide. If it's too wide, where are you going for the malta?
On the side.
I understood on the sides to make it noticeable.
So that's different than so. It's just about not changing it. The classic amalto is only when it's on top. Now it's going to put on the side.
And with Tzos Pesach before, we were talking about where it's too high, now it's too wide, now but it's Tzos too high again. There are two ways to make people really notice the entrance. One is a Tzos Pesach, a whole door, a whole entrance way. Another one is a malta. The Mishnah talks about too high is no good, too wide is no good. We know clearly that too high is a malta is okay, and now we've got another bias on this page that too high at Tzos Pesach works. Regarding too wide, we know that Tzos Pesach works. Regarding what would you say Tzos Pesach if it's too wide? If it's too wide, what would you say about malta? But more over here does not pass them. What would you pass them?
Logically, is it not a continuation of? Is it not narrowing that?
No, we talk about where the malta is after the 20 amos. Because if you use that malta, 10 amos, Thomas. If you use the malta to narrow the entrance, of course it's okay. We're talking about the malta. It's too large. It's still large to amos. What would you pass them? What would you pass them?
Like a wide lefty.
It's a shaila. So Suffolk do our bonon. Mobile. This is the Raisa do our bonon carrying mobile. Do our bonon stuff the bonon kula. The Rosh and many others pass to Mechumah. I just say a very interesting lumtus. So what? But the fact is, you're not allowed to carry mobiles that do our bonon to Kashaila.
When's he leaving?
He's going to carry from mobile to Shushabim. That's only awesome. It's only awesome to do our bonon. It's not awesome to do Raisa. Or he's going to carry. No, so not carrying from mobile to Raisa. He's carrying from his house to the mobile. The chotzer to the mobile, as you say. So then it's not deraisa. The Rosh passes the Chumah. Some say the reason Rosh passes the Chumah is because he thinks that logically an Amalta is not good. That's one answer. But there's a very interesting answer brought down. Eger mentions it, but it's very interesting svar. When do you say Safek Daman Mekula? Is when the question only arises in questions of the Rabbanah. If this same question would arise in a Safek Deraisa, for example, if you would have this kind of doorway, entranceway, by a sukkah, would it work or not? So the chayur would be the same shayla, and there would be a shayla deraises. That means when you have a question, which the same question could be asked in the deraisatika setup, and there you would be forced to say sofik deraisa lechumma. So also over here you have to machmir as well. Again, the Gemara here does not tell us what's the halacha regarding a malta which is too wide. What doesn't tell us? And it's a sofik. Some Rishonim will make up, some will machmir. Many Rishonim will machmir. The question is why the machmir? How can you be machmir? It's a sofik double nekula. So some say because they think that logically that is the case. It makes more sense to say that it doesn't work. Others explain that since it's a sofik regarding something which could be a sofik device, we're machmir. Okay, I don't want to go too much. That's the end of this subject. Now, in our Mishnah, if you read the Mishnah correctly, the way we read our Mishnah was, it says, why didn't Tanamas? No good. If it's got a Tzuras HaPesach, the ones the Mishnah say, you do not need to minimize it. Rav, when he read the Mishnah, he had a different version to the Mishnah. Instead of saying Eino Tzorech L'mayit, he read Tzorech L'mayit. You do have to now. According to Rav, having a Tzuras HaPesach does not help. Rav had a different version in his Mishnah. Says the Gemara. Let's read it inside. Masli Rav Yehuda Lechir Bar Rav. Rav Yehuda was teaching the son of Rav in front of Rav. Kamei de Rav. Eino Tzorech L'mayit, like we read it in our Mishnah. Omalei Asnei Tzorech L'mayit. Tell him you have to make it now. You can't teach my son like that. I have a different version of our Mishnah that you do have to memorize. According to Rav, if you go to Tzuras HaPesach and it's wider than Tanamas, it is no good. Not like our Mishnah. Well, I shouldn't say not like our Mishnah. Not like our version of our Mishnah. According to his version, it was okay. That's what the Mishnah says. Omar Rav Yosef, B'divrei Rabbeinu from my Rebbe, yes? Omar Rav Yosef, B'divrei Rabbeinu from my Rebbe, which is Rav, Nilmat, we learn as follows. If you've got a chotzer where the majority of it is windows, you cannot rely on Tzuras HaPesach. I've got a picture of it, even though they shouldn't matter, you shouldn't need a picture, it's quite straightforward, but sometimes pictures makes things a bit easier. So you've got a picture, it's Kuf Yud Aleph. You can look at it, it's actually sometimes nice to see a picture. Kuf Yud Aleph, let's get something to put this. Kuf Yud Aleph, it's a picture of a chotzer which is surrounded by walls, but the walls are almost all windows. I like a conservatory, except, by the way, that conservatory, you've got glass panes. I'm talking about where you've got open windows. What would you say, good or no good? I would say no problem, like you. The Gemara here says it's no good. Now, why not? What's his why that it's no good? Why? My time, it's a logic. You have to work for the logic a bit. We see that having more than Tanamas good inside the chotzer. My time, what's the logic? If it's got more than Tanamas, we said you're not allowed to, even with the Tzuras HaPesach, and we know that whenever it's poets, is no good as well. Just like when it's more than Tanamas. You said that Tzuras HaPesach doesn't work. Tzuras HaPesach doesn't work on Tanamas. You're not allowed to do Tzuras HaPesach. So therefore, you're not allowed to rely on the Tzuras HaPesach when you've got Poros Mubaloim. So if you've got the majority of windows, if you remember, I remember this as a child, I don't know why, it caught my imagination. We used to say that if you want to build a sukkah, and you don't have much equipment, let's say we would go on a Birchim outing. So we take 4 wooden sticks and a ball of string, and you've got a sukkah. Make 1 string at 3 tvachim, 1 string at another 3, 1 string at another 3, and then you've got lavod all the way up, and you've got yourself a beautiful sukkah. That sukkah would be kosher according to some shittas, many shittas. But let's say you didn't do that. Instead, what you did was you made 4 sticks and you made windows, and each window you did the Tzuras HaPesach. Would it be kosher or not kosher? Or would you say make it sukkah only out of windows without glass inside it? A sukkah only out of windows. Thin sticks, and each one's got a Tzuras HaPesach. Each one's got a ches. Without love. No, it's got love. All without love. Like this. This has got proper Tzuras HaPesach. It's got proper ches in each one. So imagine they wouldn't have the walls underneath. Because when the walls underneath, you've got a sukkah, it's going to have to be 10 tefachim high. So let's say the ground floor starts from where the window is. Why do you say parcel? Why not? Each one is a Tzuras HaPesach.
You only have 1 Tzuras HaPesach.
But Tzuras HaPesach is okay.
Not for the wall.
You're right. What?
Surely you can only have 1 Tzuras HaPesach.
Why?
No, you can have more than 1, so you have 5
Why not?
If there's no wall,
This is a wall. This ches is a wall. Okay, I'm surprised you will argue. The Gemara just said the words. Let's read what the Gemara just said. That Yosef said a chotzer which is mostly windows is not good. So if it's not good for carrying, it won't be good for sukkah either. Now, he said it as a deduction from the words of Rav, not necessarily who passed. In fact, who don't pass them. I'm surprised. I mean, okay, we'll come to it in a minute. Wait a second. But the fact is, that's what I was expecting you to say. It's no good because the Gemara just said so. Right, so the Gemara says it's no good. What's the logic? It's no good because if more than 10 amas, it's also Pesach doesn't work. So also possible by Lo'imed, it's also Pesach doesn't work. Read the Gemara. If you remember, we had something called passive voice. What's passive voice? Yes, Oile Loregel, they needed to drink water and they needed to come make a proper room for the well because nobody would be able to get in, they would have to drink water. So you have to do the minimum amount of mechitzas. What would you do? An amma by an amma on the four corners, tiny walls with big gaps in between. Now, what was the gap between these passive voice? Anybody remember? No, 10. 10 or 3. Very good. You remember this? You just read it. It's a machlokas, either 13.3 or 10. Says the Gemara, holds it's a maximum of 10. The can't compare. When it comes to more than 10, Rameh forbids it even passive voice. You must remember, passive voice, we want to make as many colors as possible. Nevertheless, Rameh said no more than 10. But over here, by Post Mubala Oimid, the passive voice was a Post Mubala Oimid and Mubala Post. What was more? Of course, Post Mubala Oimid. Much more. Most of it was Post, most of it was breached. And yet, everybody agrees that it's okay. So we see that Post Mubala Oimid is not as chomo as more than 10. Because more than 10, Rameh said, no, that's no good. You've got to make sure there's only 10 hours between the passive voice. But Post Mubala Oimid, Rameh said that is okay. So you see that Post Mubala Oimid is not as bad as more than 10. So therefore, maybe it's also a Pesach does work for Post Mubala Oimid, but it doesn't work for Tanamas, and therefore our sukkah or our chutzah, which is only made out of windows, would be okay. Yes, the Lord can't say that, but what the Lord is saying is that you cannot make a kal v'chomer. Your kal v'chomer was based on the fact that we always knew that 10 amas is as bad as Post Mubala Oimid. It says, well, no, it could be that it's not as bad. Because we see that 10 amas, Rameh was machlit. That means, okay, so once we see it's possible like that, then now you cannot compare. His whole raya was only for that we can't see. Says the Gemara, Lema Messiah, we'll prove it. We got these walls, that most of it is made out of entrances and windows, mutter. The main thing is that most of it should be standing. Most of it? That's not possible. Because he started off, the Brisa itself is self-contradictory. It starts off a chotzer where most of it is walls and windows and entrances is okay, as long as most of it is standing. Will make up your mind? If most of it is windows, most of it is not standing. Not that most of it is entrances and windows. But there's a tremendous amount, there's a lot of, doesn't mean the majority, there's a very lot of windows and entrances. Is a raya mafurish that you can't use a sukkah or a chotzer where most of it is windows. We're talking about bad entrances. That means like this, we're talking about entranceways which are not good. The word shimoy has different explanations. Tosfos, fascinatingly enough, says it's referring to the entrances in Eretz Yisrael, because in Eretz Yisrael were descended from Shem, from Al Shem ben Noach. So shimoy, the entrances of those come from Shem. Look at this, very short Tosfos. Otherwise, Tosfos says, Rashi says shimoy is loshen shemomoy, bad entranceways, or broken entranceway, like Zokin Hashmoy Rishoim, what? Defective. Oh, defective. Now, why Pischei Shimoy? One says it's got no post, one says it's got no roof. It's pictures, Kufyut Base and Kufyut Gimel. If you've got the ability to upload it, we're grateful. Kufyut Base and Kufyut Gimel. Kufyut Base, let me just explain it. Kufyut Base is it has no post because we're talking about posts where the bricks were sometimes taken out of them, so the posts look a bit jagged. Kufyut Gimel is walls, entrances that have no roof.
That's just like normal.
No, that's not a good entranceway. That's not a good entranceway, Kufyut Gimel. It's got no lintel, it's got no mashko. No, so that's not called an entranceway. Because an entranceway, Suas Pesach is a ches. This is not a ches. Oh, so that's why it's no good. But if it's, again, it would be okay. So the Ma'isa from this Gemara, we've got no raya, and in fact, many of the Rishonim hold that it is okay to have a sukkah. So I wanted to look at, which is most witnesses. We'll get to that psacholocha later because more does carry on with this more. Let's get with this. Just interestingly enough, so far we know that Tzuras Pesach works, right? If you got a mobi with a Tzuras Pesach, it's wonderful. So far, how many Tzuras Pesach have we had that don't work? We had one, could be more than 20 amos high, like the Shailif more than 20 amos works. We had another one, according to Rabbi Yosef, was Medayek, that if it's poets, if most with his breach, Tzuras Pesach also doesn't. Says the more like this. V'af Rabbi Yochanan Sobalo L'Hodra. Doma Ovin Ba'avodom of Yitzchak Ma'aseh Bodom Echad Bikas Beis Chosa. Bikas Beis Chosa, name of a place. Shenoaz Talit Kundesim Baba Pinus Hasoda. He took 4 sticks and he stuck the 4 sticks in the ground. And what did he do? Motach Zmoira Aleha. And he took a soft branch and he tied the soft branch around the 4 sticks. It's actually a picture Kuf Yudalet. Kuf Yudalet and Kuf Tesvav, if you could do it a little bit. Yeah, that's what we want to do a little bit. Just show Kuf Yudalet and Kuf Tesvav. I just want to point out the difference between Kuf Yudalet and Kuf Tesvav. In Kuf Yudalet, he put the branch on top of the 4 sticks. Picture 4 sticks stuck in the ground. And he took a soft branch and he tied it around the head of the 4 sticks. In Kuf Tesvav, he only, but nothing underneath. In Kuf Tesvav, he only did it halfway up the 4 sticks. But it's basically a similar idea. Oh, very good. I was thinking. One's a goalpost at the top, goalpost is halfway down. Very good. Goalpost at the top, goalpost at the halfway. What? We'll see. We'll come to it in the middle. We'll come to it in a minute. Again, somebody did it. Somebody did this. He stuck 4 posts in the ground, and he took a soft branch, and he tied it around the 4 posts. So what happened was, and this question came from the Talmidei Chachamim. Now, we've got 2 questions over here. Question number 1, is he allowed to carry on Shabbos? That means, is it considered? What? We'll come. What do we want in the middle of the picture? Oh, later. We'll come to it in a second. One question is, Gabi Shabbos, you're allowed to carry that. Do we look at it as 4 entrance ways that you'd be allowed to carry? Not like you wanted to say before, by the way. You said that you can't have a 4 walls with that source of Pesach. Here the wall is clear, then maybe it's okay. Let's see. Okay. What? Okay. But here we're carrying on Shabbos. Okay. I'm just saying, right. We'll see. Right? I'll just say. But another question like this. Halacha is by Kilayim, you're not allowed to plant in a vineyard. If you've got a vineyard and you build a wall around the vineyard, you're allowed to plant up to the wall. So you can have a vineyard, let's say this is the wall, you can plant wheat all the way to the wall and the vineyard all the way to the wall. So this person, by doing this very flimsy kind of walls, 4 sticks and a thing around the top, he wanted to have a vineyard, which if you look in the picture, they're trying to show you a picture of a vineyard inside this primitive sticks. There's like a little picture of a vineyard inside it. And what he wanted to do was to plant wheat all the way up to this.
It's not clear that.
Halach is if there's a wall, there's a wall. The fact that we can't see a wall doesn't bother us.
It's not preventing Kilayim.
No, the reason the wall works not to prevent Kilayim, because Kilayim anyway goes with roots underneath the ground. The reason is that Chazal understood that when there's a wall, a person makes sure to harvest within the vineyard, not on the outside of the vineyard. When there's no wall, what a person does is he harvests around the 4 arms around the vineyard. So once we decide that this is considered a wall, so then people will harvest inside the vineyard, not outside the vineyard. Even though, okay. So this is the question. The question was, he took 4 sticks, stuck them in the ground, and put the soft branch around. So the Gemara says like this: they said you're allowed to plant wheat all the way till the fence, and it's marvelous. Can you imagine? Save himself on Kilayim. Oh, just like Kilayim is not a problem, he's allowed to carry inside it for Shabbos. For Kilayim, they're permitted, for Shabbos not. But my oskina. If you say it is minat sad is the second picture, where instead of putting the branch on top of the 4 sticks, he put the branch at the bottom, like the rugby post, where it's not over, but rather on the side of. Now that's no good. We pass them like that. And it's a very important halacha. If you ever make it Tzuras HaPesach, the Tzuras HaPesach has to go over, not to the side. If you look, just to show a little bit, Kuf Yud Zayin, I saw in Pirush Chai, they've got a different picture, which is even more stronger. We'll see it in a minute. But if you look at Kuf Yud Zayin, where you've got the Tzuras HaPesach, and you see the rope, which is the ches part of the rope, literally goes from post to post. You don't have it on the side. You can't, let's say, for example, in here, if you were to bang a piece of wood from there to there, that's no good. It's not on top. It has to be on top. This is a very good Tzuras HaPesach, because you've got it literally on top. So then, on the side is no good. Of Chista, how do we pass like this? Of Chista.
Can't be any bit above the...
That's right. Yeah. That's the top. So therefore, Rav Chista says that this, if you'd have done it from the side of the side of the 4 sticks, would you say it's good or not good according to Rav Chista?
On the side, no.
No, because Rav Chista says no good at all. So we said, we can't talk about we did it from the side. When Rav Chista says, let's just that side, also it's as if we've done nothing at all. Ela Gabo. It must have done the branch on top of the 4 sticks. It says the word V'mai. What was the story? Ilim that there was 10 amos from stick to stick. What's wrong? In the end of the day, it's 10 amos. Tzuras HaPesach. Why would the Birchan say it's no good? It must be it's more than 10 amos. And it's a riot, the Birchan holds that more than 10 amos is no good. Or our Mishnah says clearly that if you've got Tzuras HaPesach, more than 10 amos is okay. So what's the answer? No, again, we talk about must be on top because from the side of Chista holds it's no good. So it must be on top. Less than 10 amos is certainly okay. But even more than 10 amos, our Mishnah says it's okay. Tzuras HaPesach, the first Mishnah in Eiruvin. Mobi, which is more than 10 amos wide, if it's got Tzuras HaPesach, it's okay. Oh, Elamai must hold like Rav. And what was Rav's gilsa in the Mishnah? That even if it's got more, even if it's got Tzuras HaPesach, you've got to be Mamait. So it's a Vaid that Birchan held like Rav, and that was his version of the Mishnah. It says, well, look. Really, there was only 10 amos. Of the only 10 amos, what was the Birchan's issue? So the Gemara says, we're not sad. It was only from the side. Oh, if it's from the side, of course it's no good. No. That means we're talking about where he made 4 sticks, put them in the ground, put the branch around the middle. According to Rav Chista, he did nothing. Rish Lakish argues and says it's good for Kilayim and it's good for Shabbos. Rabbi Yochanan says for Kilayim it's good, for Shabbos it's not. Now, if you think about this for a minute, it'll come out very big Chiddush. Because if we're talking about it from the side, and Rish Lakish doesn't agree with Chista altogether, because he held that from the side it's good for Kilayim, it's good for Shabbos. Rabbi Yochanan says no, for Kilayim it's good. Wait a second, Rav Chista held that he did nothing. Is a raya. That even though Rav Chista said he did nothing, it doesn't mean literally nothing. You've done something, but for Shabbos it would be no good. So come out very Chiddush. Oh, what's this for? What? No, the answer is that we'll talk about Isur D'Rabbanan over here. By both, because by Kilayim we'll talk about where it's in the Bikkur. And, so here this is something I wanted to point out. So let's ask an interesting question, which takes out to bother me. So let's ask us like this, that if you remember by the Oil Regel, we wanted to make it as accessible as possible. If we're going to pass that you can make this very flimsy things, why did they have to do an amma by an amma on all 4 corners? Just make a string across 4 tops, and then that's much, much more open, because you've only got 1 pole on 4 corners, and that'll be even more accessible. What would you answer? Tosis gives many answers. One answer Tosis gives, it was in Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, perhaps we only make it over here by a bikkur, which is D'Rabbanan. Alternatively, Tosis says that people going to the Regel would ride with very big camels. And camels are high, and they would knock down the rope while it was going around. Alternatively, Tosis says is that a similar kind of answer. Since there's a lot of people coming and going, the string would fall, and people would notice. By Shein came this, people would notice. Okay. So the Gemara says, once it's D'Rabbanan, the Chazal decided for this, it's good enough for that to stop. Now the Gemara says, we're going to contradict the Birchan and the Birchan and the Birchan. Top of Yud Aleph on the base. Peor is exactly this story, where you took a branch and you wove it a little bit. You made a branch which you What's the word for it? Intertwined. And then this intertwined branch, you hung it around 4 sticks. Muteras in Kilayim Avlei Shabbos. Shokish says it works for Kilayim, not for Shabbos. What did the Shokish say before? He said that he allowed for both. Here it says only for Kilayim, not for Shabbos. It doesn't work for either. Now, what did Rabbi Yochanan say before? It works for Kilayim, not for Shabbos. So it's a contradiction. What was like this? The previous Rish Lakish was speaking on his own behalf. Here he's quoting someone else. Rabbi Yochanan against Rabbi Yochanan's kasha, because Rabbi Yochanan himself earlier said that it works for Kilayim, and here it doesn't work for either. He almost was Gab on the previous case was talking about it was on top, Ocham and Atzad Shapit. So on top it works for Kilayim, but not for Shabbos. And on the side it doesn't work for either. If you go to say it from the side, what are you going to say? Where it's more than Tanamas, therefore it's no good, like Rav, that more than Tanamas is no good. Where do we know there's a difference? What's the short story? Wasn't this the story? Even though Rabbi Shah was a Bok Nelchas Kilayim, but nevertheless, he went to ask Rabbi Menuhi a question. He found Rabbi Menuhi sitting amongst a forest of many trees. He took a branch and he stretched it from one tree to the next. If there would be vines in the middle, would I be allowed to plant around? If it's talking about literally where the branch is on top of the 4 posts, more than 10 is forbidden. Sticks that pierce. And we'll talk about thin sticks which can easily stick into the ground. But also then pair with a malo and you make a pair on top. I feel if you even more than 10 damas is mutter. And laminatzad become a be'esa mutter, yes with esa osa shmamino. So again, so the Gemara says like this, that the difference between the previous limit to Rabbi Yochanan where he said it works for Kilayim, and here where he says it doesn't work for Kilayim, is we're talking about minatzad. But when it's 10 amas, it's okay. But when it's more than 10 amas, it's no good. I want to briefly give a Hilchas Shabbat, because we talked about Movu. We said that source of Pesach works. We already mentioned that more than 10 amas, according to Rav, doesn't work. We also mentioned, according to Rabbi Yosef, Poretz Meruba La'omeid does not work by its source of Pesach. And now we have a few more source of Pesach that don't work. One source of Pesach is when the walls of the source of Pesach, we said it very quickly, we should say it longer, Shimoi. The source of Pesach doesn't work because the posts are crooked, or not proper posts, jagged. Alternatively, if there's no beam on top, that is another 2 source Pesach that don't work. Another one is of Chistos Chiddush, a source of Pesach, which is Minat Sad. You need to know these halachas, because if you ever make a source of Pesach, let's say you go on holiday, and you want to make a source of Pesach, you have to make sure not to make it Minat Sad, right? Not to make a source of Pesach for that Sad, not to make the posts jagged, and to make sure that there's a stick on top, not to make it like 2 sticks. You have to make it a ches, and not more than 10 amas if you want to be chosh for Rav. Why not more than 4 amas?
The fence of the side of it.
Oh,
Right.
No, the let's say you have the sides of the ches.
Yes.
If they're walls,
yes,
there can't be more than 4 amas.
If you make it source of Pesach, of course you can.
So it's Pesach all the way along.
Yes, you can make source of Pesach up to 10
This
amas.
is the wall.
Right.
And you have a string over here.
Yes.
The wall. So if this wall is more than 4 amas, then it's a problem.
Right, because it's meshach movel. But if you add the post to it, if you're using the wall, you're not putting a post. Right, that's true. That is true. I did it before.
We had that before.
Yes, if you don't make a post, what you do is using one of the walls as a post. So you tie a string to that metal piece, and you put it to a stick here. Since that wood is more than 4 amas long, so it doesn't look like a lechi, it looks like a wall. Therefore, it doesn't look like a post. Right. Okay, so that's there. You never bothered making it source Pesach. You're relying on the wall for source Pesach. Okay. So it goes like this. Now we have more halachas of source Pesach. Gufa. Omar b'chesed source Pesach shosun outside. We also believe it's nothing. Omar b'chesed source Pesach she'amu tzricha shtei b'viyah b'tilamed bodeles. It has to be strong enough to hold the door. Afilu deles shel kashin, even if it's a very weak door. That means if the source Pesach is very weak and it can't uphold the door, then it's no good. Even if it's a very weak door, it has to have the ability to uphold the door. It has to have the sign of a is a hinge. Avkaso is a hinge. And they've got a nice picture of it, Kuftes Zain. That what happens is like this, if you can add it to the thing. The way you make a door, in old days at least, is you have a big panel, Kuftes Zain. What you do is you have a door, and then on the top of the door, you've got a pin at the end of the top of the door one side, a pin at the end of the door, not the top of the door, a pin at the bottom of the door. The pin goes into the ceiling and the pin goes into the floor. And then when you open the door doesn't fall off because it's got pins up and pins down. So if it, why is it primitive?
Because nowadays you have
hinges that go into the actual doorpost. Here the hinge goes into the ceiling and into the floor. But it has to have hinges. Now, here we're going to the thing. Ashkechinu of Acha Bred of Avi the Tamidu of Avashi. Of Acha met the Tamidu of Avashi. Omar Lehu, he said to them, Omar Ma Mid with Sosa Pesach. Did he say anything about Sosa Pesach? Omar Le Krom, he said nothing. Now here there's a big machlekes with Shoinim. What did he mean when he said nothing? The Pashup Pshat, the Rosh says that this is the only Pshat that he likes, is that what's Pashat Le Le Krom? He never taught us about it. That's the Pashup Pshat. That means he asked the Tamidu of Avashi, imagine what he said to you, did Shimush by so and so? Did he speak about Sosa Pesach? No, he never spoke about it. He never learned about that topic. The Rosh says that a mayor, a Talmud of the Rif does not pass in the previous Gemara. The previous Gemara was that Sosa Pesach to work, it has to have hinges, it has to be able to uphold the door. The Rif doesn't pass in it. Asks the Rosh, I don't know why he didn't pass in it. It's my first Gemara, and nobody ever argued on it. So the Rosh says that the mayor, a Talmud of the Rif, came along and said, I tell you why the Rif didn't pass it, because he understood, he didn't teach anything. Doesn't mean that the Rebbe never spoke about the topic. You think of Rashi wanted to speak about Sosa Pesach, he would have spoken about every topic underneath the sun. Means he didn't say anything, meaning he understood that Sosa Pesach is a Sosa Pesach. You don't need more than that. You don't need to start coming up with more chumras. And therefore the Rif held that we don't pass like the previous Gemara. Means he never said any more additional halachas other than the basic halacha of Sosa Pesach. And therefore it's like a big machlekes to show you whether you need for this Sosa Pesach. Okay.
It seems like the Paskin did.
So the Gabi that's hinge we take a maker. The Gabi that it should be strong that people are machlet. The Rosh himself doesn't like all of this. Okay. Toma. So as a Pesach she'amu. What is it? So as a Pesach. Gabi. One beam. What's the translation of corner? A beam, a reed. What does it translate? A stick. A stick on one side, a stick on the other, and a stick on top. Now the what's the shayla svichiniga or ein svichiniga? Does the roof of the ches, what? A pole on one side, a pole on the other, a pole on top. Does the pole on top have to touch the poles underneath? If you've got the picture, you have a picture of a pole that does not touch. And if you're anyway taking pictures, Tolly, you can take the next 5 pictures on Kuf Yutes, Kuf Chof, we're going to come to it in a second. Again, if you look at a picture of Kuf Yud Ches, what happens is you've got a ches, 2 poles, and a pole which is not touching the sticks of the thing. Yeah, it gets a bit mathematical. Not so complicated, but just as good to have the picture as it helps. Again, so does it need to touch or not? What would you say? So more because the machlekes. It does not need to touch. It does not need to touch. They do have to touch, right? So if you look, that's the machlekes between Sheshis and Nachman. Do they need to touch? Says the Gemara, Nachman went and he made it Sosa Pesach like the way he passed them, which is that they don't need to touch. And then he made a Movi Mutter like that. Now, according to Sheshis, this Movi was forbidden to carry there. But Nachman it's okay because he doesn't need to touch. But Sheshis wasn't happy. Only Sheshis was Shamik. So Sheshis said to his Gada, or Gata, it was good of Gata, Zil Shloif, get rid of the posts. Why? Because he held that it's forbidden to carry there. So he didn't want people to see the posts and think you're allowed to carry there. So he said to him, go and knock down the posts. Can you imagine? Because imagine you see a rob making it Sosa Pesach. According to you, that Sosa Pesach is no good. So what do? You get rid of the whole Sosa Pesach completely. At least that people should know that it's not good Sosa Pesach. That's what Sheshis told this topic. Sholaf, Ozal Sholaf Shadinu. So he did it. The Gabba went and did what his Rebbe told him. They threw him into prison. You're getting rid of, you're destroying our post, they threw him into prison. Also, she just come on, he told his Gabba, come out. And it seems from the Rishonim that when he said to them, to his Gabba, come out, so therefore they appreciated his greatness and they let him out. Nofak v'osa, he came out. Can you teach me anything about Tzorsa Pesach? Omale en tanina, kippah. Kippah is an archway. An archway. Now, an archway is not really chayiv in mezuzah. Why? For mezuzah to be chayiv, you have to have a doorway the shape of a ches. Now, we're going to have a machlokas where there's a potential for a ches to be built in. But at the moment, it doesn't have. Now, if you're looking actually in Rashi on the page, I've got Rashi on the actual page. It's by the small thin lines, where it's got an archway which is not squared off at the top. Do you have that picture in your Gemara? An archway. That, kibbutz, a dome. Well, what happens is, you don't have the ability to make in it a ches, because, what? He did it to brachas. Because it doesn't have, you can have an archway which is built up around it, where in theory, what? There's no square bit at all. It's just the archway. And sometimes you have an archway which has got a square wall around it, and you can afterwards cut out a ches inside it. Now, for a door to be chayav in mezuzah, it has to be 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. So it says like this: kippah. They both agree. The more explains. Abai explains the detail. That means if it starts bending inwards, the archway starts bending in before it went up 3 tefachim. That means there was no 3 tefachim height with 4 tefachim straight with 4 tefachim width. That means it was 4 tefachim wide right at the bottom, and straight away a tefach up it started bending inwards. So then you don't have an entranceway. Because from the beginning, you have to have at least 3 tefachim going up and then starting to bend. That's picture, if you're interested, picture Kuf Chof Aleph. Where less than 3 tefachim up, it already starts bending in. So that's no good. Inami. It's got 3 tefachim at the bottom, which is 4 tefachim wide. But the whole archway never reaches 10 tefachim. That means even the pinnacle of the archway does not reach 10 tefachim. So everybody agrees, v'lo klum, that's nothing, that's not a door. Where it's got 3 tefachim height by 4, and it's got 10 tefachim which reaches. That means that's picture Kuf Chof Gimel, where it's got 3 tefachim which are 4 tefachim wide. After 3 tefachim of height, then it starts bending, and it gets to the height of 10 tefachim, and then you have the ability to cut out 10 tefachim. So that is the question. So the Gemara says, now, if you think about this Gemara, the Gemara over here proves that you don't need, right? The question before, do the pole which is the mantle, does it have to touch the poles which are the lintels, they're called in English, the doorposts? Right? The machlokes and nachman v'sheshes. From this whole argument, it's proven that they do not need to touch. The whole machlokes of Chachamim is, do you say the potential to cut it out makes it as if you've cut it out and you've got a doorpost or not? The fact is, though, that you need to have for mezuzah, you have to have a straight pole. Now, where is that straight pole? It's not there. The answer is, you've got the potential to start digging it out and making that. The Meir says we do cut, we pretend that you've done. Chachamim say you don't. But if you were to, is it touching the post? Of course not. If you look at the picture carefully, what happens is, you've got the doorpost is not touching the lintels. It's a raya that you don't need it. So what did Sheshus do? So Sheshus said, if you meet the Beish Kelusa, don't teach them this halacha. Very strange Gemara. But Sheshus was concerned that the Beish Kelusa would be annoyed with him, because he had got rid of their mavui, because he felt that it was not kosher, because he felt that the top pole is not touching the other poles, and therefore he said, don't teach this halacha, because from this halacha it is clear that it's okay. It doesn't need to touch. So he said, don't teach in this halacha. And we actually, Paskin, it does not need to touch. I want to go back. I want to try and do that.
Did he still hold that?
Yes, he held that we don't pass from it.
And about what's he saying?
Because he didn't agree with that biased interpretation on the pshat and the machlokes. Okay, we're short of that. Okay, but Maisi, you're right. That the way we understand the Mishnah is what I don't like. We actually had this once before. Shammai say needs either lechi. Sorry, Shammai say needs both. Chum say Beisil say one or the other. You need to have two lechis. So we have three opinions. Either you need a lech and a kur, or a lechi or a kur, or Ablezer says you need two lechi. Mishuma Mishuma Oma Tamid Echot. The fear of Akiva. Tamid said to Akiva as follows. They agreed with Beis Hillel that if it's less than 4 amos wide, since it's such a narrow entrance, either lechi or kur works. From 4 till 10. More than 10, we said it doesn't work, right? So the question is only from 4 amos till 10 amos. So we have 3 shittahs what you need for a mobile. Either 2 lechi, or lechi and a kur, or b'silul shittah lechi or kur. There's a machlokas within this machlokas. Is this machlokas between 4 and 10, but by under 4 everybody agrees or lechi or kur works? Or do they always argue? Says the Gemara, if you remember, we once had a mobile which is open up to a shusar rabim, a big machlokas what to do. The more for some reason they haven't been understood that the mobile the Mishnah is talking about is a mobile which is open to a shusar rabim. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. That a mobile which is open to a shusar rabim, why the 2 shittahs? One man says you have to have doors, and the other man holds you have to have door posts. And our Mishnah says you don't need to have anything, you just need to have a lechi and a kur. And says the Gemara, a mobile which is closed off, not into a shusar rabim, a mobile which is closed off completely on the end, and it's not more foolish to shusar rabim. It's not like King's Road, where, for example, when you're Be'od shusar rabim, where it's open on both. We're talking about a road like Casfield Avenue, or for example, like a cul-de-sac. That's what we're talking about. Now, there's a very big shaila. What is considered? Shusar rabim is an open area. Shusar yochid is a closed area. If you remember, we had a very big chiddush from Rabbi Yehuda regarding Shusar yochid. Does anybody remember the chiddush from Rabbi Yehuda? He holds that how many walls do you need to have for Shusar yochid? 2. So, for example, if you've got in the middle of M62 a bridge, and the bridge goes 1 wall here, 1 wall there, and just 1 on top, you're allowed to carry underneath the bridge. Why? You've got 1 wall on one side, 1 wall on the other side. He holds 2 walls is a shusar yochid. Once a shusar yochid, you're allowed to carry that. That's shittas Rabbi Yehuda, famous Rabbi Yehuda. Now we don't agree with Rabbi Yehuda. The question is, how many walls do you need? In the having of the Gemara, one said that Shammai would say you need a lechi and a kur. Why do you need 2 things? Because they hold. Because what about movi sosim? And movi sosim means it's already got 3 walls, right? Which why cul-de-sac's already got 3 walls. That's the first picture we ever had in movi. It's picture number Aleph, if you ever want to look in the book, where what you've got is you've got a wall, 3 sides. So you only need to close off the last one, picture Aleph, right? If you want to upload it. So again, so you've already got 3 walls. The only question is about the 4th wall. Why do Beis Shammai need a lechi and a kur? Must be they need 4 walls. Why do Beis Hillel say you don't need a lechi and a kur? Must be you need 3 walls. So the Gemara wants to explain Beis Shammai is, do you need 3 walls or 4 walls? Says the Gemara. Remember the Ksava Beis Shammai, Abu Mechitzas Devaisa, you need 4 walls? No. Lizrek Misholish. Once it's got 3, it's considered Vinat, which is a Yochid, you're not allowed to throw anything into it. Who do Mechayim? Letalta, but to carry inside it, with the Rabbanon, they forbade it, Adek Arba until it's 4. You need 3, and therefore it's 3 walls is already it's 3. It makes it you need 3 walls to rise. Otherwise, they should have said that 2 walls can be lechi or kura. Look, lizek mishtayim hu demechayev. The Talmud Kesholish. The more always uses this expression. We said it before. We have to explain it. I just want to explain it clearly. We're stopping here. There's a very big question when something is a shusay yochid. There's a kula and a chumma. Chumma is if this room is a shusay yochid and you're standing outside, you throw into this room, you've been over a device of shusay yochid. That's a chumma. A kula is that since this is a shusay yochid, I'm allowed to carry from one end of the room to the other end of the room, however big it is. Says the Gemara, regarding the Issa Deiraisa of Kaif Shusay to Shusay yochid, could be Bisham and both agree with each other. They all agree that you need to have 3 walls and no more. And if you have 3 walls, it's a device. So if you've got a mobi without a lech and a kur at the end, and somebody carries from Shusarabim and throws into it, he would be chayav. The argument of Bisham is only to carry within it. to carry within it, Shammai say that you need 4 in order to be considered a Rishus Yochid, and therefore you need to have a Lechen occur then. So they'll say to carry within it 3 is enough, and a Lechen occur is only a Heker. Okay, we're up to our blessed Omer. Tomorrow's daf is longer. Try our best to try and get to it. I see, I really enjoy the give and take. We have to balance that with the thing. What? Well, Nechamav.
Yeah. That'll be the last week. The week then it's 20 to 7. It's too early, no?
No, then they change the next flag or they
No,
We
it's 5 to 7.
can't go later than 8 o'clock from next week.
No, it wants to go at 9.
makes a difference.
It have to be either with Milchamarv or
8 o'clock.
Milchamarv.
I think, what do you prefer? With Milchamarv, not with Milchamarv?
Milchamarv.
Andrew, what do you prefer? With Milchamarv or without?
It doesn't bother me. I'm at home at the moment anyway, so.
This means you're done then. You've done your Milchamarv, done your shit.
Well,
You've got more than that.
Okay, so let's do that. So
Oh,
put
yeah, so this week, just the people who were here yesterday, Friday and Shabbos.
right. Friday is straight after Shachris. Shachris on Rosh Chodesh is 7:30.
7:30.
So straight after Shachris, but no, 8:30.
Right.
Shabbos is what?
Shabbos is
Shabbos
6.
6 o'clock.
You're away from Friday to when?
Yes. So Rosh Chodesh is straight after Shachris.
Friday till
On Shabbos it's 6 o'clock.
when you